welcome to the deep dive. Today we're venturing into a really fascinating, maybe unexpected layer of reality. We're talking about this idea of a hidden psychic grid. Something believers say underlies our whole modern world. Not, wires or satellites, but this subtle energetic field.
Yeah, one that's just saturated with the collective thoughts and emotions all around us.
Exactly. It's like an invisible atmosphere, isn't it? Permeating everything.
A continuous exchange, really. Energetic information that we're all part of, often without even realizing it.
Right. And we're going to draw on some pretty compelling ideas today to explore this concept, this psychic grid. We'll dig into how our emotions might leave these lasting imprints, and the surprising role that, well, even everyday machines seem to play in it all.
And that leads into the slightly heavier idea of psychic pollution, doesn't it?
It does. But, it's not all challenging. We're also going to look at this really intriguing possibility of psychic alchemy.
The idea of transforming that seemingly negative energy into something beneficial.
Exactly. And what's so interesting, I think, is how these big ideas might actually show up in our everyday lives.
Like you mentioned, even something we totally take for granted, like driving in traffic.
Right. You're stuck in your car. Is it just, metal and exhaust fumes? Or could there be something deeper, some energetic thing happening too? So our mission today, really, is to try and understand this unseen energetic landscape we're all living in, and maybe explore the potential for personal, perhaps even collective transformation within it.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's start by unpacking this concept of emotional detritus. What exactly are we talking about here?
Well, emotional detritus, it's a great term, actually. It points to the sort of residual energetic traces left behind by our emotional experiences. The big ones like trauma or intense joy, but also the grief, the stress, the daily anxieties.
So it's not just a memory stored in our heads. It's like if you have a really intense argument in a room, even after everyone's gone, you can still feel something, a kind of thickness in the air.
Precisely. Think of it like a kind of psychic smog. Tiny particles, almost, of past emotional states just hanging there in the energetic atmosphere. And it's not just about big events. This stuff can accumulate.
In people, you mean? Or places?
Both, actually, within individuals, definitely, but also within the energetic fabric of locations over time. It creates this sort of energetic density.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know how you walk into an old building sometimes and it just feels heavy? Or maybe melancholic, even if nothing specific is happening right then.
Yeah.
Like the walls themselves are holding on to feelings.
That feeling could very well be the energetic echo, the imprint of past emotions that played out there. And then it's detritus. It's not just sitting there passively. No, it's more like thing of silt building up in a riverbed. It changes the flow of the water, right?
Okay, yeah.
Well, these emotional residues can accumulate in our personal energy fields and in the environment, and they can potentially redirect or even block the natural flow of psychic energy. What's particularly interesting, too, is that the quality of the emotion seems to matter.
How so?
Well, like intense, unresolved trauma might leave a much heavier, more persistent trace than, say, a fleeting moment of annoyance.
Wow. That's quite a thought. So what's the main takeaway from this part for us, then?
I think the crucial point is realizing the importance of emotional clarity, and maybe practicing what you could call psychic hygiene?
Psychic hygiene, like cleaning up the energetic clutter.
Exactly. Just like we look after our physical bodies and keep our homes clean, consciously tending to our emotional state and the energetic vibe of the places we spend time in. Well, it seems really important for our own well-being and maybe for the health of that collective psychic atmosphere, too.
Okay, so we're leaving these emotional echoes. Now let's shift gears a bit to something you mentioned earlier, our vehicles. Is it cars or more than just machines?
Indeed. I mean, think about it. For many people, their car is a really personal space, isn't it? Almost like a second skin you spend a lot of time in. It can become this kind of totemic artifact, really deeply connected to the owner's psyche.
Totemic artifact, I like that.
And the act of driving itself is fascinating energetically. You've got the driver's focused intention, where to go, reacting to things, directly interfacing with the car's mechanics. This creates what we might call a biomechanical field.
Biomechanical field, like a blend of human energy and the machine.
Sort of, yeah. A fusion. Think of the driver's focus and will their bioelectric intentions interacting with the car's systems, its movement. The resulting energy signature is this mix of the driver's subtle energy and the car's own, mechanical and maybe electromagnetic presence.
Okay, that's a really interesting way to frame it. So what's happening energetically inside this mobile bubble?
Well, over time, these vehicles just soak up a whole spectrum of human experience. Obviously, the driver's own emotions are huge stress, calm, road rage.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely felt that.
But also the feelings of passengers, the music we blast, the conversations we have, even just the vibe of certain journeys, memories linked to the car.
So it becomes like a rolling sponge for feelings.
You could say that. It develops into a kind of mobile memory field, constantly absorbing and probably radiating these subtle energetic imprints. And what's interesting too is the repetition. Like the daily commute stress might imprint differently than the excitement of a rare road trip.
So all those sing-alongs on holiday and those tense phone calls stuck in traffic,
Yeah.
they're energetically kind of stuck to my car.
Energetically, it seems plausible, yes.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets, well, even more speculative but interesting.
Come on.
Think about a big parking lot. All those cars parked close together, they could be forming this unconscious network, overlapping psychic fields. A sort of temporary localized hive of all that stored up emotion and intention.
Wow. A parked car psychic gathering. That's
Yeah.
a totally new idea to me.
And it might explain something. You know how some people, maybe those who are more sensitive energetically,
Huh.
they report feeling weird shifts in mood or getting strange feelings in places like parking garages or large lots.
Yeah.
They could be subconsciously tuning into that collective psychic hum, that aggregation of energy.
That definitely puts a new spin on parking lot stress, doesn't it? Okay, so cars are like mobile emotional sponges. Does this apply to other machines too?
The basic idea seems to hold, yeah. Pretty much any machine we interact with regularly, and maybe with some kind of focus or repetition. Think about like an old typewriter that someone poured their heart into writing on for years. Or a family oven that's been central to countless meals and gatherings. Even something mundane like an elevator in a busy office building, carrying all those people and their momentary thoughts and feelings day after day.
So they're not just inner tools, they're also
Yeah,
energetic repositories. Is that the idea?
precisely. Through all that repeated human contact, they seem to pick up these subtle energetic imprints, almost mirroring the energy of the people using them. They become, in a way, like co authors in our human stories, reflecting and holding on to that latent emotion. And the way we interact might matter too. A machine used with care and focus probably carries a different vibe than one used with constant frustration, right?
It almost reminds you of those old stories about haunted objects.
Yeah.
It's maybe less supernatural and more energetic.
Well, there's often a kernel of truth, or at least experiential reality, in those old traditions. Many esoteric teachings talk about how objects handled repeatedly, especially with strong intention, get energetically programmed.
Right.
And if you step back, this whole constant interaction, our consciousness interacting with the buildings, the machines, the whole built environment, that's probably what gives rise to this larger psychic grid we're talking about. It's not some separate mystical thing. Maybe it's just an emergent property of how interconnected we are with everything.
Okay, so we're constantly leaving these energetic footprints.
Yeah.
And our machines are maybe even recording them in some way.
Huh?
Which brings us to a slightly worrying idea you mentioned. Psychic pollution. What exactly is that?
Psychic pollution is basically what it sounds like. It's the overload, the accumulation of all that psychic and emotional debris we've been discussing. Think ambient fear, suppressed anger, unresolved trauma, just the general mental noise and emotional static in our environment.
So it's like the energetic version of actual pollution, like smog hanging in the air or constant background noise.
That's a really good analogy, actually. And this kind of pollution, it can cloud the overall psychic field. It might make it harder to sense things clearly on a subtle level and could even influence our behavior and how we perceive things, maybe contributing to that background hum of anxiety many people feel.
And you said cities are particularly prone to this.
Yes, it seems likely. Urban centers just have so much density people, noise, constant stimulation, often high levels of stress, social friction. All these things contribute to a much more saturated, sometimes chaotic psychic environment. The grid there can get distorted, fragmented, and some researchers suggest this might correlate with things like higher anxiety rates or feelings of disconnection, alienation, what some traditions might call spiritual disconnection.
It sounds pretty bleak when you put it like that. Is there any upside?
Yeah.
Any hope in dealing with all this psychic clutter?
Well, this is where that idea of a paradoxical opportunity comes in. Just like in classical alchemy, where they believed base metals held the potential for gold.
Right.
Even this dense, seemingly negative psychic pollution can be seen as raw material for transformation and growth.
Okay, now that sounds interesting. Alchemical transmutation.
Yeah.
Turning psychic smog into gold, basically. How could that possibly work?
Well, think about what alchemy really is at its core. It's about transformation, right? So, alchemical psychic transmutation is the idea of consciously engaging with all that psychic debris, that emotional detritus, and actually using it as the raw stuff, the foundation for personal awakening or maybe even collective healing.
So instead of just being pushed around by it or trying to block it out, we can actively work with it, like
Yeah.
turning garbage into compost.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. Compost. You take organic waste, stuff that seems useless, and through a process, it becomes incredibly fertile soil for new growth. Similarly, when we consciously acknowledge and engage with emotional detritus, our own, and the stuff in the environment, it can potentially be broken down, transmuted into a kind of energetic fuel for deeper understanding, for growth.
You mentioned some specific practices earlier, like psychic aikido and geomantic tuning. How they fit into this?
Right, those are specific ways practitioners learn to navigate these dense energetic fields. They find that these supposedly polluted places can actually offer really profound insights, precisely because of the concentrated energy there.
So the density itself holds potential.
Yes, but the key is the practitioner's intention. Approaching these spaces not with fear or trying to fight the energy, but with mindful awareness, with a clear intention to transmute. Psychic Aikido is about skillfully redirecting that chaotic energy, not meeting force with force.
Okay.
And geomantic tuning is more focused on harmonizing the energy flows of a specific place.
So if we consciously engage with this, say, polluted grid, with the right intention, maybe even with empathy, we can become agents of change within it. We can actually help clean it up, energetically speaking.
That's the idea, exactly. Our conscious, compassionate engagement doesn't just potentially help us refining our own energy field, it could also contribute to enhancing and refining the larger psychic grid itself.
That definitely changes how I think about dealing with negative vibes, you know. Okay, now you also brought up empathy and something called tribal memory. How do they plug into all this?
Well, empathy, you could say, is like the key. It's what unlocks our ability to perceive and understand the emotional information that's embedded in the grid.
How so?
It acts like an energetic translator. It allows us to sort of feel and to sense the underlying emotional syntax of our environment, of a place, maybe even an object.
So it's about intuitively picking up on what a place is holding energetically.
In a sense, yes. And then practices that connect us with what we might call tribal memory. Think of rituals using ancestral tools, like burning Palo Santo wood, for instance. Those can be really powerful grounding mechanisms. They're not just symbolic, they're acts of remembrance, reconnecting us to the Earth's subtle body, maybe to collective human experience in a deeper way.
So the smells, the rhythms, connecting with natural things, they can help retune us. And the grid.
That's the idea. They can help bring our own energy field and, by extension, the immediate psychic environment back towards a state of coherence, of balance.
And just to clarify, when you say tribal, you don't just mean ancient cultures, right?
No, not exclusively. While those ancestral links are definitely part of it, tribal here also points to that really fundamental human instinct we all have. The instinct to connect through shared symbols, rituals, collective experiences. That drive for connection and shared meaning is still incredibly potent today.
Okay, got it. So we can actively interact with this grid. You use the phrase syncing with the grid. What would some actual conscious practices look like for doing that in our daily lives?
Right. Consciously interacting is really an ongoing thing, isn't it? Refining our sensitivity, engaging in this sort of continuous energetic dialogue.
Yeah.
There are various practices people use. Mental mining, for instance.
Mental miming.
Yeah, using things like meditation or even dream work to consciously try and access or extract the psychic imprints tied to specific places or objects.
Right.
Then there's psychic aikido, which we touched on, developing that skill of redirecting chaotic energy instead of absorbing it or fighting it head on.
So learning to flow with the energy rather than resisting it.
Exactly. Then you have sensory attunement. That's about intentionally using our senses, maybe specific scents like Palo Santo or resonant sounds, to deliberately tune in to subtle energy frequencies. Location linking is another one, consciously establishing a psychic connection to a specific place, like setting an energetic anchor. And finally, energetic hygiene, just regular practices to cleanse our own energy field and the spaces we live and work in, clearing out accumulated psychic residue. These aren't about becoming psychic superheroes necessarily. They're more like practical ways to sharpen our awareness and navigate the energetic soup we live in, especially now.
These sound like, well, relatively accessible tools people could explore. Now let's loop back to that really big idea. Can the built up emotional detritus of a huge area, like a whole continent, actually be transformed? Turned into what you called etheric fire for mental alchemy by, really skilled practitioners. That sounds incredibly powerful.
It is a very potent concept, yes. The idea is that a truly adept practitioner, someone with incredibly refined energetic sensitivity and mastery, could potentially tap into that vast, often turbulent pool of unprocessed collective emotion, emotion held within a large geographical region, and then transmute it into this etheric fire.
Which isn't literal fire, obviously.
No, not literal fire. More like a highly refined, potent form of psychospiritual energy. The understanding is that it's derived from the very friction, the intensity of all that unresolved collective feeling.
And you said this links back to psychic Aikido, redirecting that massive, almost aggressive momentum.
Precisely. The adept isn't trying to stop or fight this huge energetic current. That would be impossible, likely dangerous. Instead, they're skillfully redirecting it, refining it, and ultimately transmuting its raw power. But doing this kind of continental scale work would demand an extraordinary level of mental discipline.
Yeah, imagine.
Profound emotional neutrality, deep grounding, and a really sophisticated understanding of symbolic language and energetic dynamics. It's not something taken lightly.
It sounds like tuning into the emotional weather system of an entire culture or continent.
That's a great way to put it. And then skillfully extracting meaningful patterns, refined energy from that incredibly complex system.
You also mentioned that these emotional residues have momentum. Why is that important here?
Yes, the momentum. It's fundamental. These residues aren't static blobs of energy. They are dynamic expressions of unresolved stuff experiences, ingrained psychological patterns, maybe ancestral wounds, unfulfilled desires.
Okay.
This inherent momentum gives them inertia. They tend to persist, even perpetuate themselves if they're not acknowledged and processed. They just keep going.
So they kind of have their own energetic steam engine pushing them along.
In a way, yes. And this momentum also means they tend to seek resonance. They act like energetic magnets, drawn to people or places vibrating at similar emotional frequencies.
Right. Misery loves company, energetically speaking.
Kind of, yeah. But it's not just passive. A skilled practitioner can learn to consciously engage with this momentum, even harness it, like a surfer riding a wave, using its power instead of being tumbled by it.
Okay.
In alchemy, this relates to the idea of prima materia, the raw, undifferentiated stuff that's already moving, already in flux, which actually makes it more available for transformation.
So because it's already moving, it's easier, in a way, to redirect it, to transmute it into that etheric fire you described. Can you elaborate just a bit more on the mechanics of that?
Sure. Etheric fire, again, is that vibrant, refined energy that arises from the interplay of our conscious perception, our focused will or intention, and the raw psychic or emotional stuff we're working with. The actual transmutation happens when a practitioner has developed the capacity to consciously hold a significant emotional charge, maybe collective trauma, generational pain within their own energetic field, but crucially without being overwhelmed or destabilized by it.
So they have to be a strong enough container, energetically speaking, to hold that intensity without breaking.
Precisely. The practitioner becomes like an alchemical crucible. The raw emotion is brought into their awareness. It's worked with maybe through focused attention, intention, specific breath work, ritual, and then it's released back into the wider field. But it's released as transformed energy, more refined, potentially healing. That's the etheric fire.
And this fire can then benefit the practitioner too.
Yes, it's thought to enhance their own perception, deepen intuition, strengthen their energetic boundaries. And this active engagement is very different from just trying to ignore or push away difficult emotions, which some call spiritual bypassing. This is about meeting it head on, but skillfully.
Okay, this is all incredibly potent stuff. Demands real skill and awareness. Let's try and bring it right back down to earth now, to something most of us experience. How does something as ordinary, as mundane as driving in traffic fit in with, say, psychic Aikido?
Well, it might seem mundane, but daily driving, especially navigating stressful traffic, for most people it's an unconscious routine, right?
Yep.
But energetically, you could see it as a kind of mass participation psychic ritual in modern life.
Or ritual. How so?
Every commute, every traffic jam is this shared energetic space. And it's usually filled with a potent mix of projections, frustration, impatience, anxiety about being late, distraction, often a lot of suppressed aggression bubbling under the surface.
You can feel it sometimes, can't you?
Absolutely. Now, for someone who isn't aware of these energetic dynamics, just participating unconsciously, it can be really draining. It can lead to energetic depletion, maybe a numbing of your senses, or even getting caught up in that collective negativity, road rage, intense frustration, that kind of.
Oh, yeah. We've all felt totally wiped out after a bad commute, haven't we?
Exactly. And here's the interesting part. For someone who is actively cultivating these principles, like psychic Aikido, the traffic environment can actually become, surprisingly, a really effective, readily available training ground.
A training ground? How?
Well, it's a constant stream of chances to practice moving through chaos, through emotionally charged situations, without absorbing all the negativity. To practice maintaining your own center, your presence, amidst all that external stimulus. Plus, the sheer amount of unprocessed emotional energy concentrated in heavy traffic. For a skilled practitioner, that can actually become a rich source of raw material for transmutation. If they have the ability to consciously access it, refine it maybe through just being present, mindful breathing, cultivating inner stillness right there in the car.
Wow. So instead of just being a pain,
Mhm.
the commute could actually be an energetic workout, a place to practice awareness.
Precisely. And there's another layer too. Remember how we talked about cars holding emotional residue?
Yeah, the mobile memory fields.
Well, consciously engaging with your car without understanding, it could potentially awaken its latent energetic qualities, almost making the car an extension of your own energy field in your psychic Aikido practice, like a mobile shield, or even an energetic transmitter or amplifier for your intention.
That completely reframes my drive to work. Okay, let's try and pull all this together then. What are the main threads, the core insights from this deep dive into the psychic grid?
Well, we've really explored this compelling idea of a real, though mostly unseen, psychic grid underlying things. We looked at how our emotions seem to leave this enduring detritus sticking around in people and places. We considered the kind of surprising role machines, especially cars, might play as conduits, maybe even storage units for this energy.
Right.
We dug into psychic pollution, that buildup of negative emotional gunk in our shared environment. And maybe most importantly, we explored the transformative potential of alchemical transmutation. The idea that we can consciously engage with and maybe even transform this challenging energy into something beneficial, something empowering.
And it's not just abstract theory, is it? We've touched on how even things we think of as inert or just routine activities are potentially soaked in this energetic resonance.
Exactly. And the crucial point for you, the listener, to really take away is that you're not just a passive bystander in all this. You are an active participant. You're constantly contributing to this psychic landscape and being influenced by it, whether you realize it or not.
So maybe as you go about your day to day, just take a moment to think about your own interactions with this psychic grid. What feelings, what energies might you be leaving behind in the places you move through? And what subtle vibes might you be picking up from people or even objects around you? Is that daily commute just a source of stress? Or could it maybe, just maybe, be an unexpected place to practice a different kind of awareness? Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.